world's second biggest brewer by volume, has a market cap of 810 billion rand. Headquartered in London, it has more than 200 beer brands in over 75 countries across 6 continents. The group is also one of the world's largest bottlers of Coca-Cola products. It trades on a price-to-earnings ratio of 28, a dividend yield of 1.7%. SABMiller, you just can't hold this one back. Paul, you want to jump in?
Yeah, great, fabulous success story, one of South Africa's original corporate giants, very well-run business, and hence was able to convert its local strength into a global play. Went to London at almost exactly the right time, started buying assets in Europe, then did the deal with Miller in the United States, where they bought a 27% stake, controlling interest from merged with, but then ended up with Altria. That was the previous controlling interest in Miller. South America, Australia, China, so really just internationalizing its business and pursuing that premiumization strategy. In other words, improving margins, trying to sell people on the premium brands.
Chris, I've got to remind you to look interested when he speaks. He's very sensitive about this. Is there anything you would like to add to the SABMiller story?
Look, it's a very special company. I've looked at this thing for over 30 years. And I've got to say, all the companies I've ever analyzed or written upon, SABMiller is streets ahead of any of them. It is by far the most successful story in terms of going offshore. As Paul mentioned, it's headquartered in London these days. And I think a lot of that comes back. It's not just acquisitions. I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking this is a purely acquisition-driven company.
But a lot of that has been organic growth, is what you're saying.
The organic growth, but not just that, Bronwyn. The fact that they employ a thing called the SAB way. Now, what is the SAB way? Tony van Kralingen, who was the previous CEO prior to in South Africa prior to
Norman
Mr. Adamy, he said, if it moves, measure it. If it doesn't, paint it. And that kind of neatly summarizes what this is about. It's all about measurement, and it really is a phenomenal company.
Paul, the best company that Chris has analyzed over the last, how many years did you put in there, Chris?
31 years.
31 years. You can't argue with that.
Yeah, look, there's got to be some winner in each global industry, and they certainly seem to, along with the combination of Ambev and Anheuser-Busch, to be one of the key consolidators. And remember, beer is a fabulous product because it's been with humanity almost as long as we've been getting together around a fire. And it is a product where people are associating themselves with a brand upsell. So people like the idea that they're an X or a Y or a Z drinker. I think there are causes for concern, though. We know that in America, beer consumption,
not going to like this.
Beer consumption is tailing off a bit. Young people are not. It's sort of got a positioning as a working class type of drink in that market. And the upmarket spirits, people drinking Grey Goose on the one hand, and young people drinking these kind of alco pop spritzer type things. So I think that is a little bit of a concern. The fabulous position in Africa and all these other countries, though, and other continents, really probably outweighs that.
Doesn't look as though you are too concerned on that front, Chris, or am I wrong?
Check the worry in my eye. No, look, I mean, the US does remain the world's biggest profit pool as far as beer is concerned. But having said that, if you scratch the surface, it isn't anymore just about these rather insipid commodity type beers. And SAB, for example, with its holding in Miller, they have wonderful craft beers like Leinenkugel. Don't ask me to spell it; it's quite a difficult one to do so. But I mean, those craft beers are doing extremely well in the US, as are premium branded products. So the commodity side not doing as well. The worth more sector, we call it premium, doing far better. And SABMiller exceptionally well positioned in that segment of the market.
Worthy of mention is obviously the bottling element for Coca-Cola, Paul.
Yeah, so that's the ABI business, which is very strong, very powerful, and a big profit contributor. The other South African entity that SABMiller owns, of course, is Sohosan, like a 40% stake of that business, which is also a big entity and a big money spinner, and has done very well since it came forth in its own listing. And I think that's added to, and one of the reasons why SABMiller has done as well as it has. I know that it's a stock that's easy to be glowing about, so I just want to throw another potential negative on the table. Why not?
I don't think you can knock Chris down on this one, to be honest. But give it your best bet.
The connection between alcohol abuse in poor countries, and in fact around the world, is just a concern for me because it leads to a regulatory response. I mean, you will have seen over the weekend, in Khayelitsha this weekend, some fight broke out in a tavern in Site B in Khayelitsha, and 6 people lost their lives because some drinkers started basically shooting off shots at each other. These are just small incidences of things that happen in South African taverns every single weekend. And I think you've got to recognize that in time, government regulation might tighten up and increase excise duties to try and stop that sort of behavior.
And of course, in that same breath is the advertising when it comes to alcohol. Where do we stand with that, and how's it going to impact the company? Chris?
As far as advertising is concerned, I think there's no doubt about it. We're going the same route as the anti-smoking lobby. I have no fears on this whatsoever. I mean, at the end of the day, you look at BAT's market share today and what it was prior to the imposition of the advertising ban on cigarettes, precisely the same as it was. All that happens, and I stick to this one, is it doesn't stop people doing what they normally would do. In other words, all it does is it changes people's perceptions of one brand from one brand to another. It makes one brand go from top of mind where previously it wasn't. It isn't going to make you smoke if you weren't going to do it. It isn't going to make you drink if you weren't going to do it. And I think this dichotomy between the two protagonists here is never going to be properly resolved. If it happens, if you get a complete ban on drinking in South Africa, wonderful. It just means that SAB has to downsize its marketing department and saves an awful lot of money.
Hot or not on SABMiller, Paul?
Yeah, look, in any event, I think cigarettes are much, much worse for people than beer is. So for me...
Don't give us any more lectures. This is an investment show, please.
SABMiller, I mean, it's been drifting sideways at around the 500 Rand a share mark. I think there is a little bit of a sense that it's sort of rolled over a bit in the UK market, London, where it's principally listed. But I think at these levels, as earnings continue to come through, it is hot.
Chris, hot or not on SABMiller?
I think it's always a good time to buy SABMiller, so I think it's a hot stock.